Բարձր սկսենք արդեն, հա։ Okay, չնայած պլանավորել էի անգլերեն խոսալ, կա խնդիր անգլերենի հետ։ Okay, ինչ? Okay, then let's do English. So I'm Vahan. I'm the CEO of Breach. I'll say what that is in a second, and what we do. But today we're going to talk about Generation Z and how to understand them, hire, and retain. Basically, it's an HR topic. Do we have anyone here that's like in management, HR? Okay. And do we have anyone that's currently working or trying to get a job in a company? No one's working here. Okay. Okay, sure. So I mean, this topic is going to be centered around just the new generation, the young people. I think many of us are in that generation. These are basically the people who are born after 1995, 1996. So yeah, and the people who are just graduating university and are still in university. So so let's just start. Please ask questions. Feel free to ask questions in the middle if you have something to ask. Let's do it like a conversation type of thing instead of me just lecturing, because yeah. So nowadays, this Generation Z type of thing is often depicted as a struggle for companies, and there are numbers to back it up. So in the last 8 years, 50% of students and recent graduates who get a job in a company don't stay there for at least a year even. So before a year, they leave the company and go somewhere else or do something else, and this is a huge loss for the companies. And this number has risen like 5 times in the last 8 years. So 8 years ago it was 10%, now it's 50%. And companies just don't know what to do. They constantly invest in turnover, invest in benefits, invest in retention, talent retention, invest in benefits to just keep people on board, try to change the whole infrastructure of the company, try to change culture, try to, crazy things. And this year they lost around $36 billion on those processes, and the numbers aren't going down. So yeah, the understanding here is that Gen Z is the problem, right? And a bit about me. So what we've been doing with our team for the last 2 years is helping companies find the young talent that they need in their companies to grow. And we've already helped about 240 students and recent graduates to get their first job, their first internship. So a lot of things that I'm going to talk about is from the internet, but a lot of the things is also from my own experience and what I've been seeing. And right now, just as a background information, there's a huge lack of talent in tech. There are not enough developers, not enough product managers, not enough designers in the world. By 2020, so next year, in the US alone, there will be 1 million tech jobs that won't be filled. So this is a huge issue for tech companies. And yeah, when we're talking about hiring and growing your team, right now, we're talking about getting into that market of colleges, market of recent graduates, market of the new generation. And if the companies don't understand them, they're not going to fill those million jobs. And yet we understand all of that, and all we hear is complaints. So from companies. So we've worked with about 140 companies. So a lot of what I'm talking about here is going to be like personal statements that I've heard myself. Is first of all they care about is money. They will jump ship for a higher salary. This is not like centric into like one generation, and it doesn't define a whole generation, like it's a lot of people, but this is something I've heard over and over again, and this is just simply not true. And I'm going to go over this, and then I'm going to like justify why any of this happens. So they can't learn fast enough, not interested in trying new things on their own. This is a statement that I think is absurd. And again, we'll talk about it later. But the thing is, these two statements together, these are like extremely contrary to what is actually in reality. So a lot of this points to companies being a bit wrong in some places. So they leave after 2-3 months of training. We don't get value. This is something that happens very often in nowadays companies, especially in tech. They have all these big internships, 4-month, 3-month trainings, and then trainings and internships before you finally get to your job. And then when they train 15 people and only 2 of them remain in their company, of course, it's a huge loss for them. But why did that even happen? That side of things is never questioned. They're not aware of the work environment, work ethics, and values. This is the Papa Kanhosker. You don't know how to work. The work ethic isn't there. You have to work more. You have to try hard. Like all of this stuff. Again, this is just, in my opinion, and what this talks about. This is just something that companies aren't in line with the generation and what we want. So one thing is that this is a two-sided problem. Like this, of course, this happens because of some things in the generation that are maybe not true, like based on the information they know already. But this is a two-sided problem, and it has to be approached as such. Both parties are sometimes at fault, and sometimes the one party doesn't see it. If you keep losing employees, chances are that you are the problem. This is very true. You have to always figure out why is things going wrong, and especially if the company is using the word employees, that's a nice red flag right there, right? So nowadays, 21st century, people deserve a little bit of team member, a bit, So this just talks about culture in general, right? So let's just talk about facts. Let's just go over a couple of slides here, just based on facts and based on like what the generation is about, and then we'll talk about like actual like practical things that can happen in the company to fix this. So so it's very important to understand. And if you're a person who is going, I guess we don't have any company representatives here, but if you're getting into a company, you have the power to let them understand this too. So this is pretty important. So when a student or recent graduate looks for a job or a first job or a second job, what they mainly look for is experience. And if you corrected me and said not experiences, I would agree with that, because that would be more true, I think. So salary isn't really the important thing here. It is, of course, in Armenia, especially if we have problems with free internship exploitation, but that's not the case here. Salary is important. It has to be, a person has to be rewarded for what he's doing or they are doing. But the key here is, in this current generation, the key isn't really the salary or the overall feel or the whatever. It's about experience, and am I growing in this company? Do I like what I'm doing? Do I get like new experiences every day, every month, every week, and do I like it? So what matters most, and this is like based on survey studies, so it's not, what matters most are a visible path to growth. This is extremely important. If I'm going to a company and I see and I'm told, okay, you have to work 1 year as this position, and then we'll think about promoting you to the other position, that's not motivation. I will just do 1 year, just the minimum to not get fired, and then I'll think about getting promoted. And this is not how a person grows in a company. So a healthy work environment and communication, this might sound very trivial, but this is something that companies need to think about a bit harder, I think, because these are still like very problematic. So many companies have the problem with communication. There are just people who are locked down. You cannot talk to them. No one talks to you throughout the day, which is kind of strange, but and interested in respect to what they're doing. So if I'm a person and I'm doing a job, it would be nice if I had any interest and even respect to what I'm doing. So this is where the company mission and vision comes. So you have to believe in what you're doing. You have to believe that what you're doing is important and is valuable. Culture is important. I think this study, they interviewed like dozens of thousands of students and recent graduates, and then 30% of them agree that empowering work culture is the most deciding factor for them staying in a company longer than 3 years. Longer than 3 years. We've been talking that 50% don't stay 1 year. And 30% here says, empowering work culture, I just need to feel like I have power over something. I just need to feel like I'm growing. I just need to feel like I'm doing something important. And I will stay with you for 3 or more years, right? if everything else is correct also. And only 15% that mentioned competitive salary, so half. Of course, with this generation, we have like our risks that we grew up with, and many companies just do not understand how to deal with these. For example, we've been going through a failing education system. We've been in the age of growing online learning. We've been in the age of growing alternative learning, and a lot of companies just aren't ready and or just like simply aren't committing to the investment of training and coaching their new recruits. And this coaching isn't more about like you don't know physics. You don't know math. It's not about that. It's about we haven't had the healthy communication and healthy networking in schools that the other generations might have had. So many times the coaching, not like professional training, but the coaching socially and communication-wise is more important. There is a need for initial babysitting. I would be lying if I didn't say this. So a lot of people, the gap of when I can get hired is very low now. For example, I don't know, like many people have their first job at 16 or 17, while 10 or 20 years ago that wouldn't be possible, or maybe it would, but not in this format. And companies need to understand that if they're hiring that young, and those people, the young people, can be very talented and can be very productive, but they do need some initial babysitting. You can't just leave them there and imagine they'll do some work or they'll be productive. There is need of healthy interaction. There is need of establishing that transparency that, hey, if you have questions, ask. And of course, like in hiring aspect especially, there's very little expectation handling that's happening in the current Armenian, let's say, environment and global overall too. If I'm applying to a job, usually you have absolutely no idea what the job is like except some Facebook photos of their office or someone you know in that company. Usually that's the case. So. And there are some companies, very great companies in Yerevan that do very great expectation handling, but not most. And this is very important. If you don't have the right expectations, you and the company, if the expectations aren't set right, it's going to fail because it's going to be either like, chances are it's going to be, the expectations will be higher than expected and higher than physically possible even. So you have to set those expectations. So after all of this, why would you target the generation? Like, why? That's the real question here, right? So I can just not hire anyone younger than 24 and that'll be fine. Well, that seems not to be the case. Usually, if the preconditions are met, I would say that with the generations, with the time going by, the younger people would be more harder working, just because of the added boost, the added motivation from interests. With the times going by, the new generations that are coming in, they are much more focused on what they're interested in, what their hobbies are, and if their hobbies just happen to bring them money or have like interesting experiences, they will be the hardest workers that companies have ever known. They are, of course, more tech-savvy, more self-reliant. These are the people that have been using YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram since the day those programs came out. So they understand how technology works, how internet works, how it progresses. And they have pioneered, let's say, online learning. So they're very self-reliant in just getting a quick Google search done, understanding how some concept works, and having an opinion on it. And of course, early hired and grown talent are usually the most loyal. Like if you're in a company for a long time and they've shown their care for you and you have an interesting time, you would be usually more loyal to them as well. And again, companies don't really have much alternative. If they don't capture the market now, they're going to be dead in a couple of years, because how generations work is that sometimes 50% of the workforce is that generation, and if you don't have the market, you kind of limited, like physically limited to grow. So let's talk practice. We didn't have a lot of people just already in the companies, but I'm just interested in, okay, so what do you think would be the best ways or best like tricks to keep people engaged, keep people interested, or as a person that would be working in a company, what do you expect from the company to just keep your motivation up? Anyone?
I think to invest on them, on their knowledge or experience, and invest something.
Right. Okay. So investing in knowledge and experience, that's great. Anything else? We're talking about what the companies have to do to help keep the engagement and keep the motivation of especially their younger employees, team members. Don't use the word employees. Yeah. Like, imagine you're a part of company.
Enough challenges and treat them like seriously.
Sure. If you're treated seriously, that's a great point. Yeah.
Interesting project.
Right. Interesting project.
Learning stack.
Learning.
Stack.
Okay. So
Programming stack.
yeah. So learning new things every day. Let's say that's couple. Okay. So what I did here. So I took a couple of advice from one of my favorite like startup CEOs who have like a great culture. So I'll just show it to you. So one thing that matters a lot is transparency, a culture of asking questions. When a person can just go ahead and ask a question to another person that's maybe 5 or 6 ranks above him, and it's all transparent, that's great. If I, as a entry-level recruit or an intern, know company-wide statistics on our product usage or something, that's transparency. When I know that the code I write here is bringing this much benefit to our users, I'm much more motivated to do what I'm doing, and I'm much more engaged. And this culture of transparency is extremely important. Again, not lying, telling the truth is also very key in his. Not hiding information. A lot of companies think, hey, I'm not going to share our revenue with these people because they're new. But if you think about it, it really doesn't make any sense. Those people aren't going to do anything with your revenue number. They wouldn't even care. But the fact that you tell them that means a lot. So the second is low egos, a culture of not afraid of mistakes. I think these two go hand in hand. A culture where people are very afraid of mistakes and are afraid of getting punished is extremely toxic. And this leads to people not speaking up. So when I have a question or I have a bug in my code and I don't know how to fix it, if I hide it, it's going to cause so much more problems to the people like above me or later than me. And when I'm not afraid of that and I can ask for an opinion or ask for help or even admit to my mistakes, that's just much more healthy on getting more things done. Because, hey, mistakes are the way we improve. And as we mentioned, continuous learning is one of the most important things, as mentioned here. Growth is very important in a company. Like the culture of continuous learning, the culture when the company enables you to learn and grow instead of just labeling you as someone junior or mid and just letting you stay there. Because when a company invests in your growth, invests in your learning, then first of all, it's a benefit for them because in 2 or 3 years, you'll be the senior, you'll be leading teams, you'll be leading products, and maybe if you have a startup, you will share with the company. Really, the way some companies treat their team members with like low access to information, or I know a couple of cases that just baffle me that companies like upper management just gets angry if someone in their team does something not related to the work and just trying to figure things out on their own, and that's just absurd. Yeah, this is also great practice to just keep things in touch, keep things engaged, and also like high standards. Culture of taking responsibility. Responsibility and high standards, kind of different terms, but these are very interconnected. So the way this works is everybody in the team, starting from the very early recruits to the very upper management, must have the feeling of being responsible on something. If I'm a new person in the team, it doesn't matter if I'm a good developer, bad developer, or good manager or something, right? If I don't have something that's just mine, the chances are I'm going to lose interest if other things aren't perfect, right? But even like if let's say I'm a junior developer, but there's like this part of code that is mine. This is my code. If this works, it's me. If this doesn't work, it's me, and I have to take responsibility for this. So I'm already engaged. So this domain is mine. So later on, and this is like also good for growth. The more aspects of the company you're responsible for, you start to see your growth. So you start with something small, and then you are responsible for a project, for a small feature, for the whole team later on, right? So this responsibility really starts to lead to higher standards, because if everyone's responsible for something that is theirs, then chances are they're going to do it to the maximum of their capacity. Yeah, so this is basically what I've prepared. Yeah?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you first for talk. The first question, what is the percentage of that generation in your company?
We're 100. So yeah, we just graduated 2 weeks ago. Most of us.
Okay, so I've observed two types of problems with that generation, so I would like to hear your observations on that. First is that, as you mentioned, there are a lot of hobbies, interests, classes, etc. For that generation.
Yep.
And what I have observed that there is actually the work is something not in the first or at least second priority, but there are a lot of stuff to do, and they just not treat work as like the generations before. So what solutions you can see with that? And the second, that actually it's very good that they like to try a lot of new stuff, but sometimes even for big companies it's time to decide on one technology stack or one tools, and at least for half a year like keep that going. And with that generation they are just, there is something new just published in beta and they want to try it and put it in production, etc. So
yeah, so I'll start with the last one. So how you deal with when, the question was how you deal with when your team members just get sidetracked, get like into new technologies that aren't really ready for production, and they waste time off of work to do that instead of like the actual stack, right? Yeah, so what I've seen great companies do is they kind of control and like centralize the learning process in their company. So I know examples where a company just, when you get hired, right, everyone in the company has a learning track for their month, week, semester, or year that they have to like get this new skill. And this is how the company centralizes how the learning works. So for example, if you're working on this stack and you know like a new thing is coming out that will help that stack, you might want to like buy a course on Udemy on that new thing and distribute it to your team so that your team can learn that instead of wasting time on something else that you don't want them to learn. This is one way. I think a couple of other ways, there are a couple of other ways of like centralizing and controlling what your team is learning and what new skills it's acquiring. Because the key here isn't how the people grow, it's the people grow. So that's how I would answer that question. So the other one was, so with people with so many interests and hobbies, a lot of them, again, get sidetracked to, and the work they are doing, right, the productiveness isn't the first priority in the workplace. Yeah, so that's also a thing that I think that is very much reported and is a problem to the companies. I do understand that. There are cases where the work is very intertwined of what my hobbies are. For example, if I've been a long lifetime gamer and this is a game development company, this has been my dream, I'm going to be the hardest worker in the company. If my hobbies are something that is not related to my work, maybe the company can somehow incorporate the hobbies into the team culture, the company culture, so that work is still being done, and this is controlled by other things like metrics and like your development management, how it's done. But the hobbies do have their place. So I, as a team member, do feel like my interests are respected, and I can keep them in the company, and I can work and then have my hobbies on the side by side. Does this make any sense? I mean, I know a couple of companies in Armenia that invest a lot in fun activities that relate to most of the teams, like hobbies and interests. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from it that this is actually really cool. So if I'm a programmer, I obviously like to write code, and I like, I don't know, Game of Thrones. So maybe we'll write the code, I'll get to my metrics, this will be all right. And then if I know that me and my team will go to watch some Game of Thrones later, so that kind of keeps the motivation running a bit. But I do think that that is an actual problem of getting sidetracked with hobbies. This is why we see a lot of people jumping ship, not because of a higher salary, but because maybe this has been my dream job since childhood, so I'm going to go to this company instead.
And also adding to the first question that you asked, like if generations that people are not serious towards the work, the problem, and it's not the problem, basically the change is that the definition of work for our generation has changed. Like the thing that you mentioned and the meaning of work has dramatically different definition for us. That's why we just wanted to integrate new things and new changes and new productive approaches towards the work that was like for the last years, and to shift that.
Yeah, but again, it's always the point of productivity and what value you are creating within a company. And if you are not caring enough to create that value, and it is interesting for you to go to skiing or something else with your friends instead of staying and delivering the product, it's somehow the better culture.
Yeah, this is where the product management like methodologies come in, and like new things, new stuff to keep people engaged. Yeah, thanks so much.